When Mr. Sterling's saliva splattered onto the polished marble floor between my feet, I didn't even twitch a muscle. His face, purple with rage, was only a few inches from mine, yet I didn't even twitch a hair. I stood there motionless, like the gleaming white statues at the entrance to the Gilded Gallery. I listened to my life being torn apart in front of the leading figures of society holding champagne glasses. "Elara, you're nothing but a moving visual pollution," he whispered, his voice echoing throughout the building from the vaulted golden ceilings. "Take a look at yourself, Elara. You're no different from a ghost that burst out of a Victorian cellar. Just by standing there, you're dragging down the quality of the Royans. When our customers come here, they should see beauty, perfection, and vitality. Your situation is a blow to our brand image. You're fired. Go to the cleaning room and immediately remove your colorless shadow from my store without cleaning the spot where you stood with bleach." My name is Elara. I am 22 years old and was born with albinism. To the world, I am a white ghost, a porcelain doll that could shatter if I don't protect myself from the sun. To my boss, I am a visual flaw in the world. Thinking about it, I never understood why he hired me. Maybe he was trying to look like a helpful person, I don't know. But there's something they don't know. I'm the sole heir to my late grandfather's fortune. Enough to buy the gold-plated fixtures in this building thousands of times over. I started this job 6 months ago under a false name. I wanted to exist in the world without the power of my family's wealth, or rather, I wanted to know if I could exist at all. I wanted to understand whether people could see the person beneath the outward appearance. As someone with a flawed outward appearance, I hoped they would see the person inside me. And today, I got my answer. As I walked to the staff changing room, I noticed that the emotional hierarchy of the luxury store was beginning to shift. I noticed that the people I worked with whom I shared our little secrets over coffee, found the marble floor very interesting. If it hadn't caught their attention so much, they would probably have looked at my face. Spinning in Mr. Sterling's system, the sun of their own world, I became a planet with fading light. I gathered my small bag, a notebook, sunglasses, and an old, light key. The lightness of the key opened a masterpiece of internal-external contrast in the middle of a field where we had to drive from one end of the city to the other. From the outside, it looked like a cold, gray stone castle, but inside it was filled with the warm atmosphere my grandfather had created and the silent power of $1 billion portfolio. I went downtown to the street where I used to work. It was afternoon, the sky was cloudless, and the sun was burning my sensitive eyes. I took out my phone, not to look up the lenses I needed for my job, but to call a lawyer. I called Marcus, my grandfather's chief asset manager. "Marcus," I said, never having heard myself speak in such a tone of voice and with such determination. "Who owns the building where the Gilded Gallery is located, the roof company at Sterling Plaza on 5th Avenue? Does the same company own all the stores in the plaza?" There was a silence, then the sound of Marcus pressing keys on his phone. "Right now, it's in the hands of the Henderson Group, and that group owns all the property in the plaza. They've been looking for a quiet buyer for months, Ms. Elara." "Why did you ask?" I looked back at the store's golden doors. There he was, behind the glass. I saw Mr. Sterling chatting with a wealthy customer, laughing. "Buy it," I said. "All of it. If they offer a partnership, don't accept it. If they have debts, buy it with their debts. I want the deed and eviction authorization in my hands by 9 a.m. tomorrow. Use the private equity fund. Don't give them the name." The invisible child was gone now. I spent the entire night in my study, with my laptop as the only light illuminating the room. I watched billions of dollars transfer across the screen. I watched as the Henderson Group, the owner of the city's largest and most magnificent plaza building, lost it all. To the world, it might have been just a commercial transaction. To me, it wasn't. For me, it was the price being paid by someone who saw himself as a king for everything he had done. I looked at my reflection in the glass. I looked the same, yet something had changed. My white hair, my pale skin, my violet eyes stared back at me. I no longer saw a freak. I saw a hunter. I finally understood that my late great-grandfather hadn't left me this money merely so I wouldn't have to work until the end of my life. He had left me a weapon, one that ensured men like Mr. Sterling would never underestimate anyone again, a weapon that proved someone could say enough to them. I was no longer a quiet, obedient child without a voice. I was the storm itself, powerful enough to shake Fifth Avenue. We spent the rest of the evening in my library with Marcus, making sure all the documents were finalized. The air was filled with the scent of old paper and expensive ink. This was my chosen family. Marcus, who had known me since birth, sat at the table with his daughter, Sarah, reviewing the legal paperwork. They didn't see me as a freak or a ghost. To them, I was their boss. "He has no idea," Sarah whispered with a faint smile. "He thinks he's celebrating tonight because he cleaned up his store. He has no idea that tomorrow he'll wake up in a building where he no longer has any authority at all." "Good," I said, taking a cold sip of water. "I want him to feel the walls collapsing in on him. I want him to understand that quality has nothing to do with what you see on the surface. Quality is about who owns that surface." As I laid out my clothes for the next morning, not the clerk's uniform, but a custom-tailored charcoal suit that radiated authority, I felt a strange sense of calm. The show, don't tell phase of my life was beginning. I wasn't going to tell him he was wrong. I was going to show him how insignificant he truly was. I fell asleep imagining the look on his face when he realized that the white ghost hadn't merely haunted his store, but owned him. The morning air was cool, but for the first time in my life, I felt no need to hide from the world. I stepped out of the matte black SUV parked directly in front of the gilded gallery. I was no longer wearing the ordinary uniform of a shop clerk. Instead, I wore a silk, ivory-colored power suit that reflected my skin, a deliberate choice, showing that I no longer hid my albinism, but had turned it into a weapon. I adjusted my custom black sunglasses, not to hide my violet eyes, but to focus them on the man standing behind the glass doors. Mr. Sterling was there, strutting like a peacock as he straightened the display of Italian leather bags. He looked up, and our eyes met through the glass. I saw a flicker of discomfort cross his face, followed instantly by an arrogant, contemptuous grin. He gestured to the two security guards I used to have lunch with, ordering them to stop the trash before it dirted his spotless entrance. When I reached the heavy brass handles, the guards blocked my path. "Elara, don't make this harder than it has to be," one of them whispered, his eyes filled with a mix of pity and fear. "Sterling's in a foul mood. This time he'll call the police. Just go home." I didn't answer him. I didn't have to. Marcus stepped out behind me, carrying that thick black leather folder. He looked not like an employee, but like a harbinger of doom. "Step aside," Marcus said, his voice carrying the weight of 30 years of legal battles. "We're here for a scheduled transfer of ownership with the property manager. If you interfere, you'll be charged with trespassing." The shock was brief. The guards looked at one another, then at my expensive suit, then at the professional legal team behind me. They stepped back. I pushed the doors open. The shop bell rang, normally the sound of a sale, but today it announced the funeral of a career. Mr. Sterling stormed toward us, his expensive shoes striking the marble floor with sharp, angry blows. "What is this circus?" he roared, his face already turning that poisonous shade of purple. "I fired you yesterday, you freak." What part of the word fired don't you understand? Or does your lack of pigment affect your hearing too? "Security. Get this ghost out of my sight, or I'll sue her for harassment." I stopped at the very center of the foyer beneath the massive crystal chandelier and waited. I waited until the whispers of the society ladies fell silent. I waited until every phone camera in the store was pointed at us. I pushed my stoic response to its limits. I waited until the silence became unbearable. "Mr. Sterling," I said, my voice low but steady, echoing like a silver bell in a cathedral. "You're mistaken. I didn't come here to work. I came to inspect my new property." The Henderson Group finalized the sale of Sterling Plaza at 2 a.m. this morning. I assume the digital notification has already reached your email. Nevertheless, I brought a physical copy for the sake of your limited imagination. I took the black folder from Marcus and held it out to him. Sterling didn't take it. He stared at it as if it were a coiled snake. "You're lying," he stammered, his bluster deflating like air leaking from a punctured tire. "You're a clerk. You're nothing. Just a defective girl." "This defect," I said, stepping close enough that he had to lean back to protect his personal space, "is the reason I learned to see what others overlook. I saw your fraudulent accounting records, Sterling. I saw how you bullied younger employees. And I saw that this building was the only thing that ever made you feel powerful. That's why I bought it." Marcus stepped forward and opened the folder that revealed the quiet justice within. According to Section 14, Paragraph C of the Master Lease Agreement, any tenant manager who creates a hostile work environment through discriminatory practices or damages the reputation of the building may have their contract terminated without notice. We have yesterday's recordings, Sterling. We have statements from the employees whose wages you underpaid. Your tenancy is void. You have exactly 1 hour to collect your personal belongings. The inventory, however, stays here. It has been seized as collateral for the unpaid maintenance fees you attempted to conceal. The validation collapse was a sight to behold. The society ladies Sterling had worked so desperately to impress were now whispering among themselves, their eyes wide as they grasped the reality that the person holding the keys was that very ghost. I heard a small, joyful sob escape from Maya, the young sales clerk Sterling had once reduced to tears in the break room. Sterling's knees buckled. He grabbed the edge of a mahogany display table for support. "Elara, please. We can talk about this. I was under a lot of stress. I didn't mean what I said. You're very valuable. You're a wonderful part of this store's history." "The mirror moment has passed, Mr. Sterling," I replied, lowering my sunglasses just enough for him to see the cold, unyielding violet in my eyes. "Yesterday I was a stain. Today I'm the property owner. And as of this moment, I'm exercising my boundary closure right. I don't want your apology. I just want you gone." The next 60 minutes unfolded like a masterclass in digital aftershock. As security escorted a sobbing Sterling out of the building with nothing but a cardboard box of desk ornaments, the video was already trending. My phone began screaming in my pocket. My mother, who once made me wear a hat so I wouldn't embarrass her in public, sent a message. "Elara, sweetheart. We always knew you were a genius. We're hosting a dinner tonight, you must come." My father followed immediately. "I can help you manage the portfolio, darling. Let's talk." I didn't even unlock my screen to read the rest. I simply selected their numbers and pressed block. They weren't my family. They were just people who shared my DNA but never my heart. I turned instead to my true chosen family, to Marcus, to Maya, and to the security guards who were finally brave enough to smile. "Maya," I said, looking at the young woman. "You're the new floor manager. As compensation for the toxic environment you endured, double everyone's salary for the next 3 months. And call a contractor. I want these harsh lights replaced with something softer, something that embraces everyone, no matter how they look." I walked back to the entrance and looked up at the gold leaf sign reading Gilded Gallery. "Take it down," I ordered. "From now on, this place will be called the Prism. Because a prism takes in light in all its forms and reveals its true colors." The sanctuary call in my heart had finally found peace. For years, I believed love meant enduring the shadows cast by others. Now I knew the truth. Real power is becoming the light itself. I stood on the same sidewalk where I had been humiliated less than 24 hours earlier and breathed in the city air. It no longer tasted like defeat. It tasted like ownership. If you've ever been that invisible child, if you were told that your unique traits were flaws that diminished your worth, hear me now. Your silence is not a weakness. It is a reservoir of power. Your differences are not stains. They're the very things that will one day make you the owner of the room. Have you ever experienced a moment in your life where you were ignored or dismissed because of your appearance or identity? What did that moment teach you? Share your story with us below. This isn't just a storytelling channel. It's a sanctuary where we draw inspiration from each other's quiet strength. Subscribe to join us and discover your own power. The boundary closure was absolute. I walked toward my car, leaving the city's chaos behind me. I didn't need to look back to know the white ghost was gone. In her place stood a woman who had finally stepped out of the shadows and into the light she created herself. My family and Mr. Sterling? They could keep calling. I was busy building a world where their voices no longer existed.